What's up, awesome YouTubers? Ryan1988 or Justin back here to do a video for you guys. And today's video, I'm here to talk about my top 10 favorite Stephen King theatrical films based on adaptations from Stephen King. So he either wrote a book, a short story, or screenplay. And all these, of course, are Stephen King staples for me. I absolutely love them. This is also a kind of part two to a part one video I did last week where I talked about Stephen King miniseries. So definitely check out that video. I'll try to remember to leave the video somewhere down in the description where I talked about, the miniseries that I've seen and I own. So you're not going to see the TV miniseries of It or Salem's Lot in this video, but it is in part one. So go look out for that and watch that. And I'm going to do 4 honorable mentions or honorable mentions of movies that I love but did not initially make my personal top 10 list. So the first one is Dr. Sleep. I love the movie. I've seen it a couple times. I need to go back and keep watching it. This will probably later on make my top 10, but I do love Dr. Sleep. I think it's not only, a film that is a perfect continuation to Kubrick's movie, which I love Kubrick's movie, and you are going to see that in my top 10. But I also think it's a respectful film to Stephen King. And I know Mike Flanagan went to Stephen King and kind of had to convince Stephen King for a while to either have this movie be made or be a part of it. I can't remember. It's either one of those. But Mike Flanagan wanted Kubrick's movie involved, but also wanted to pay respect to Stephen King. And even though Dr. Sleep isn't like 100% based on the Dr. Sleep book, it's very close. And the changes that are made fit well with the movie. And I know I know Stephen King kind of really respected the movie and loved the way the movie turned out. So yes, Dr. Sleep, I am a big fan of that. You got a fantastic cast there, including kind of the standout performance, which is Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat. So I had to mention that one. Again, it's not in my top 10, but Dr. Sleep, one of the recent theatrical adaptations, I absolutely love. Another one that is considered a classic that I love, but I've only seen it like 3 times, so it's not in my top 10 yet. Maybe later on down the road or down the line is Stand By Me. I love it. I think it's fantastic. But right now it is not in my initial top 10. Stand By Me, though, great movie. I think the reason why it doesn't make my top 10 is I don't have much of an attachment for the movie like the other films in my top 10. A lot of the stuff that's in my top 10, for most part, are movies that I grew up with. Like, I saw and right away I just loved them so much. So there's a lot of childhood films in that top 10. And some modern stuff that I love right away that, of course, would make that top 10. But Stand By Me, I don't talk bad about this movie because I love it. I think it is fantastic, but just right now, it's not in that top 10. The next one, the next honorable mention is Sleepwalkers. This is just fun. I personally love the film. Definitely not in my top 10, but it is a film I do love. Directed by Mick Garris, and he would be involved with a lot of Stephen King miniseries. And then the last honorable mention is Cujo. So another one I love. I know some people are definitely mixed with this. Either people love it or don't love it. I believe it's the same way with the novel. I could be wrong there. Not a lot of fan love for either the novel or the movie of Cujo, but I do love Cujo. I grew up with that film, but I've only seen it, probably 5 or 6 times in my life. And it's not a movie that I loved right away, but I do love it now. So I had to mention that one. So going into this, guys, my top 10, again, are either novels, short stories, or kind of a screenplay that Stephen King wrote. And so he had involvement, of course, with all of these somehow. He might not have been like a producer on some of these movies, but he was involved in some way with either a short story, book, or screenplay from Stephen King. So a lot of people would not put this movie on their top 10 list. I do, though. I love the film. I grew up with this movie, guys. I saw it at a young age. This was something that I rented on VHS quite a bit, and that is Firestarter. I know it's not a perfect movie. I know some people are probably shaking their heads. Justin, why did you put this movie on the list over other films that you mentioned in your honorable mention? And again, it's just a childhood favorite film of mine, and there's a lot of things I do love about it. First of all, I love the cast in the movie. Drew Barrymore, this is one of, not her first movie, but her first, like, leading role, pretty much. Obviously, she did E.T. before this, but, you know, I love her in this. You got Martin Sheen, I believe Martin Sheen, hopefully I'm saying his name right, who, you know, great actor there. You have George C. Scott, the late George C. Scott, who was great. So overall, just a great cast. David Keith is in this movie. Heather Locklear, probably saying her last name wrong. I have bad tongue twisters. She's in the movie. You know who I'm talking about. But the thing that really stands out the most for me is the music. I love the music so much. I think it's one of my favorite. It is one of my favorite soundtracks to a movie. Tangerine Dream did it. Great soundtrack. And for the time, like, the, you know, practical effects were just awesome. A lot of the fire sequences, those are like real. And if they're not real, they're, you know, computer effects, but, you know, or CGI effects, whatever you want to call it. But either way, I do love the effects in this movie. Again, a lot of practical ones. Just awesome. Yeah, again, not everybody's favorite Stephen King adaptation and doesn't get a lot of talk, but I love Firestarter. The next one is actually based on a short story from him. This is another underrated one. And again, probably some people are like, Justin, why is this on your list, but you did not include Stand By Me? And again, it's because I love the movie and I have so many memories with it. And that is Silver Bullet. Silver Bullet. One of his most underrated adaptations. It's a werewolf-based movie. It's based on one of his short stories that he did. I can't remember the initial short story title. Cycle of the Werewolf. But Silver Bullet, I love it. You got the late Corey Haim in one of his first movies. Gary Busey. So many other familiar faces. I just love Silver Bullet, and I think it's definitely one of my favorite adaptations. This movie scared me so much as a kid, and it was just moments throughout the movie. It wasn't the entire film, but like one of the first scenes in the film is this teenage girl who's just been through a lot, and she's about ready to commit suicide when the werewolf comes and attacks her in her bedroom. The way the movie was, that scene was lit and directed, the fact that it took place at night and it took place out in like a kind of a stormy night, was just very creepy. Very well directed again, and very eerie. I know the werewolf in the movie, when you kind of see him up close and he is revealed, he's not the greatest looking werewolf, but it is a scary film, and I love this movie. Again, a lot of standout moments in that film for me that make me really love that. Going into number 8 is, again, not like a modern Stephen King adaptation. I mean, this did come out, I would say, 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, but that is The Mist. I recently rewatched this back in September or early October, and I love The Mist. I think it is a wonderful, well, it's a fantastic adaptation from, I believe, a book. I believe it's based on a Stephen King book. Very well directed, very effective. The ending will just make you cry. It makes me cry. I know it makes a lot of people cry, and it's just very heartbreaking. But again, wonderful cast here. A lot of great actors and actresses involved. Directed by Frank Darabont, who would direct Shawshank Redemption and I believe The Green Mile. They're not on the list because I haven't seen those either in a long time or I've never seen them before. So this is all pretty much stuff that I grew up with or stuff that I recently rewatched. But or movies that I just love right away. But The Mist, I love it. I recently rewatched it. I've always loved this movie, and it's definitely one I had to put on the list. I know that the book's ending is different, but I know Stephen King actually approves of this ending, which, it's, again, a very heartbreaking ending. And definitely watch the black and white version of The Mist if you've never seen it. It is very effective. So I actually love both the colored version and the black and white version, but the black and white version, that is definitely very effective. Coming in at number 7, we talked about Rob Reiner just not too long ago in my honorable mentions, but Misery. Nose itched. Misery had to make my top 10. This one I did not grow up with too much. I mean, I saw part of it like growing up, but I fell in love with this movie 5 years ago, and it's one I go back and I watch a lot. I think it's fantastic. Kathy Bates, James Caan, wonderful cast here. It won Kathy Bates, I believe, the Academy in 1990, her Oscar win. Misery is fantastic, very effective movie. I love snowy setting film, so that's perfect. Kathy Bates is wonderful in this. She's one moment very happy, and the next moment you're really scared of her. James Caan does a wonderful job as well. Directed by Rob Reiner. I mean, just a wonderful movie. So, Misery, definitely in that top 10 list. So coming in at number 6 is actually a film that Stephen King wrote the screenplay for. It's not based on a book or a short story from him, but it's also directed by the late and great and classic George A. Romero, and that is Creepshow. I had to mention this. I love Creepshow. I always loved this movie. It scared me as a kid. I remember seeing it on TV and being terrified of this movie, but I love this movie so much. So Creepshow is amazing. Again, not a book or novel by Stephen King, but he did write this, and he did work with George A. Romero a lot on this movie. And Stephen King's actually in one of the short stories in this film. So Creepshow, if you've never seen it, check it out, guys. It is a classic, but I'm sure a lot of people have seen that one. A lot of nose itching going on. I do apologize. So going into my top 5, guys, this one right here probably would either be on people's top 10 list, but like lower down, so like maybe like top or number 10 or number 9. Or some people probably would never put this on their list, but I love this film. It's directed by my favorite director of all time, John Carpenter, and that is Christine. I love Christine. I've always loved Christine. I know some people don't love this movie, but I love Christine. I think it's wonderful. Again, directed really well by John Carpenter. The music is so good. I love the music. Again, done by John Carpenter, composed by him. Great cast for the time. Keith Jordan, I believe? Yeah. Keith Gordon, who would actually go on to, be in a lot of other movies before and after this, but he's also, I believe, a director now. He's in the movie, and I just think this is a very effective and very creepy and eerie film. Again, the music makes it work that way. The atmosphere is perfect. The way it's directed. I just love Christine. And it also has the late Kelly Preston in this movie, who passed away not too long ago. Very sad. But she's in the film, so she has a small part in it. Christine, though, by Carpenter, is not only one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations, but it's one of my favorite Carpenter movies. I love Christine. I think it's fantastic. And the book is terrifying. Like, if you've never read the book, go read it. If you're a book reader and if you love Stephen King, but say you haven't read it, go read that book. You would never think a car would be terrifying, but Christine is a terrifying book and movie, and the car is terrifying. I mean, the car doesn't do much. I mean, it doesn't talk. It doesn't, do anything to really kind of make it scary, but just the way that it's described in the book and in the movie, and the way that Carpenter directed the film, it makes Christine the car very creepy. But yeah, I love Christine. That's one of my favorites. I go to that movie quite a bit, and it still holds up so well, in my opinion. I'm not sure what Stephen King thinks about that movie. It's not one that a lot of people bring up to him, or he doesn't really talk about it too much. I would hope that he would love this, because reading the book, yes, there's some moments in the book that are just really good that aren't mentioned in the movie, but this is very close to the book. From what I remember, it is very close to the book. And I'm just a big Christine fan. I just love that movie so much. Another movie that they changed the ending on, and I have read the book, so I know the ending's book. And it's been remade. It's been remade recently. Another adaptation from the Stephen King book. But my favorite adaptation from that book is the 1989 or 88 Pet Sematary. I believe 89. I could be wrong. But Pet Sematary. I love this movie. Just, again, it changed the ending. I think it works better. It changed the ending compared to the book, and I think it works better. It's also, out of the two movie adaptations, the best one. Even though I do really enjoy the 2019 Pet Sematary, this is definitely the better one. I mean, that 2019 movie kind of changed a lot of key things. And even though I can appreciate it and I do really like it, I mean, for me, this is the best movie adaptation of the book. But yeah, Pet Sematary, again, a film that, like, I've grown to really love. It scared me as a kid, and it still freaks me out now. Zelda as a character is just terrifying, but you have the way the movie's lit, the way it's directed, the music in the movie makes the movie just terrifying. Very effective and very eerie. Wonderful cast here. I know some people either don't put this on this list, don't put it on their list, or it's really low on their list. But for me, I've not always loved this movie, but I really love this film now. And I've seen it several times. And again, another kind of thing that really stands out with this movie is you do have the Ramones involved, and you have a lot of kind of Ramones music throughout the film. And of course, you got the classic Pet Sematary, the song by the Ramones, at the end of it. Mary Lambert, great director. I wish she was more kind of. I wish she would have went on to do a lot more kind of well-known stuff. I know she's directed stuff after this. She directed Pet Sematary 2, which is one of my favorite sequels, but that's not based on a Stephen King anything. It's not based on a book, novel, or screenplay by him. But I do love Pet Sematary 2. But again, going back to Mary Lambert, I wish she would have done more. I wish she would have got a lot more work. I know before this and after this, she was involved with a lot of music videos, including Madonna music videos. But I thought she did a fantastic job with Pet Sematary. And it's definitely one of my favorites. So if you've never seen this, or if it's been a while since you've seen it, go watch the original Pet Sematary. Mika Hughes, Gage, Creed, he, for a 3-year-old or 2-year-old at the time, did a wonderful job. He can play like really cute and then just really terrifying. And that's another thing about the novel that was just so creepy, was how you had this like 2 or 3-year-old in the novel and in this movie that were very sweet and very loving and kind, and then can just play cruel and mean and evil. I mean, in the book, he's terrifying in this towards the end, but in the book, man, I read that book this past summer, or I finished the book this past summer, and I was terrified. I was terrified for a lot of reasons for that book, but kind of a lot of moments with Gage Creed when he comes back to life were terrifying. So if you've never read the book, go read the book. I mean, it is amazing. Sorry for the rambling. I just had to mention that. Pet Sematary is not only one of my favorite movies and favorite horror movies, but it's now one of my favorite books. I love that. Coming in at number 3, I'm actually going to include part 1 and part 2. I consider them one big movie, so I'm going to. And that is the 2017 It Chapter 1, or just It. And then the 2019, It Chapter 2. So we got the steelbooks here. Obviously, I'm more of a fan of Chapter 1. It's like the mini-series. I'm more of a fan of the first half when you have the young losers clubs as kids. I think this movie is just fantastic. As a standalone movie, I mean, I want to include both parts because I overall love both parts. But this is the standout for me out of the two. You got you have a wonderful direction here by Andy Muschietti. Hopefully I'm saying his name right. Andy, the director who did Mama before this, directed this. I thought he did a wonderful job. I love the small town feel that he was able to create. You have wonderful kid actors who play the Losers Club members. They did a fantastic job. Very relatable kids. And then you got Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise, and he's just terrifying in this. For me, Tim Curry is the classic Pennywise. I mean, everybody can agree with that. But Bill Skarsgård, terrifying. And I absolutely love this movie. So going on to Chapter 2, again, I'm going to include it as, just one big movie. And like with the original miniseries, I mean, the second half, or the second half of even the novel with the adult Losers Clubs, or the adult members of the Losers Club, hopefully I'm saying that right, isn't as strong. And it's definitely not with this. I go back and forth. Do I like the second part in the original miniseries better, or do I like this? There's a lot of things that I do love about this Chapter 2. One, I love the fact that Andy, the director, came back. Again, he was able to direct that small town feel. I love the casting choice of the adult Losers Clubs. I think they all worked really well. I like the fact that he not only got well-known names, but he also got unknown names. So it worked really well. And the well-known names like James McAvoy, Bill Hader, and Jessica Chastain just feel they feel like your everyday people when you watch this movie, pretty much. You don't see them, or at least for me, I didn't see them as actors when I watched this. I truly believe that they were the characters in the movie. Again, directed really well, great score, not only in this movie but in this movie. It's just not as strong as the first half. It's like the miniseries as well. It's not as strong as the first half. And same with the book. This is one book that I've been reading for years and years, and I haven't finished it yet. And I think it's just because even though I do like the adult side of it, it's just not as effective. So, besides some of the problems that this movie has, I do overall love that part. But out of the two, if I were just to pick one, the first part is my favorite. But I include it as one big movie. So going down to my number 2 and number 1 of favorite Stephen King movie adaptations. This was really hard because at one point you have what a lot of people, I mean, these are both considered classics, but one is talked about more than the other. But for me, the one that is my number 1, I really grew up with that movie, and I loved it right away. Where, say, the one I'm about ready to talk about, I did grow up with it, and I liked it as a kid. I love it more now, and it's just because I love the director. I love his work. The cast is wonderful, and despite, behind-the-scenes problems, and the fact that this director changed a lot of the book, and I am actually reading the book right now, I love the film. Didn't love it as a kid. I appreciate it so much more now, and that is The Shining. As a kid, I've always liked it. There's always things that I remember just stood out for me, but Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, I love it now. So it ranks at number 2, and it could be number 1 years down the road, or years down the line. But I love The Shining. I love Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Again, he changed quite a bit from Stephen King's book, and Stephen King was not happy with that at all. I think after this, he kind of knew that, he had to have some type of say-so, or kind of had to have the approval, or directors had to have the approval from Stephen King to make his books into movies or miniseries. But I still love The Shining. Again, it changes things, but in some ways it works. I love the book. I love what I'm reading, but Kubrick was able to make it his own. He did overall tell the story, and I do love The Shining. Jack Nicholson, I talked about it in the miniseries video. Even though he doesn't even come off as the most well-liked guy, Jack Nicholson did a great job as Jack Torrance. And you have Shelley Duvall in this, who plays Wendy. She's wonderful. I know she kind of had some trauma behind the scenes with this. And if you actually watch the documentary, it's really sad because Kubrick really put her through a lot. And it kind of made her cry. And there was just a lot of after effects that she went through because of this movie. But The Shining is wonderful. I love this so much. It's definitely one of my favorites. I haven't even mentioned, I love the look of the movie. I love the fact, even though it's not the hotel that Stephen King wrote or had envisioned, I do love the set, and I love the way the hotel looks. I love the colors. Again, I'm a big fan of like snowy related movies, and Kubrick did it so well. And again, despite the changes, I do love that movie. So, but number one for me is actually a film that changed stuff, but it also stayed really true to, or like 90% true to what Stephen King did in the book. And actually, Stephen King actually prefers this movie over his original book, and that is Carrie. So my number one is Carrie. I know probably not a lot of people would say this is their number one. It definitely would rank high on their list, but I love Brian De Palma's Carrie. I believe this was the first type of adaptation ever for from a Stephen King novel. Whether that be a TV miniseries or a movie, this was the first adaptation. I could be wrong, but I believe it is. Carrie is just a wonderful film. Again, 90% true to the book with some changes that Stephen King approved of and prefers over the book. And I've read the book. I've tried to read the book. It's a good book. I haven't finished it. I need to eventually finish it. But I definitely prefer the movie. I think this movie is fantastic, or it's a wonderful movie. I love the direction by Brian De Palma, especially like the prom scene, the way he directed several things in that. Kind of like the two shots, the 2 point of views, or the 2 shots that he did during the prom scene were fantastic. Wonderful music, wonderful cast. Sissy Spacek, who pretty much at the time had done some movies, but this was like one of her first big movies. She was fantastic as Carrie White. Piper Laurie as Mrs. White was creepy, yet great in the movie. I love Carrie. I love everything about this. I love the cast. I love the direction. I love the fact that even though, again, 90% of this is true to the book, Brian De Palma also did some changes, and it worked great. It worked for the movie, and Stephen King loves this movie. I mean, it's one of his favorites, and he prefers it over his book. So that's actually a rare thing. I could be wrong, but I think it's a rare thing that Stephen King prefers the movie adaptation over his own book. If you've never seen Carrie, check it out. Wonderful film, in my opinion. And that is the one that really stood out for me the most as a kid, was that. And I just absolutely love Carrie. Of course, we've had remakes. We've had sequels of it. The Carrie TV remake was a pretty good remake, at least for me. The Rage Carrie 2 was just a fun sequel. I know it's not based off of a short story or a book by Stephen King, but it was fun. 90s fun. And then you had the 2013 one, which it's an okay remake. It's not one of my favorites, but it is a film. Each time I watch it, I do like it more and more. I just don't think that's one of my favorite adaptations, or one of my favorite, remakes. I know it's a remake of this, but it's also an adaptation of Stephen King's book. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed my list. I apologize for the rambling. Sometimes I can't talk, but, that happens. I wanted to get this video out here, and I hope you enjoyed my top 10. And if I didn't go into full detail, I apologize. The video's already going on almost 30 minutes, so it would have been way longer, but I didn't want to make it too long. So anyway, guys, let me know your top 10 favorite Stephen King movie adaptations. Again, I did not add miniseries in this video. That is actually in part 1. But let me know your top 10, guys. What is your top 10 favorite movie adaptations from Stephen King? Books, novels, or screenplays? I would love to know. So as always, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. In with the positive, out with the negative. Thank you for watching. Go eat some Skittles. And so much love to you guys. All right. Bye.